Here's my sourdough starter that I love using in new recipes, and in this video I'm super excited to share some of these new and creative recipes that we have been making and loving. The first day I'm making a sourdough pasta, and for that I'm actually using spelt flour in this case, and it's a spelt flour from Central Milling that I get here locally. I add a couple of cups to my bowl, and I like to close those Ziploc bags to keep anything out of the flour that's not supposed to be in there. Then I have my sea salt in reach. I'm adding the sea salt. That always brings out the flavor. If you've ever tried pasta without salt, it's pretty bland. Don't recommend it. I love that. Again, it is within reach and it goes back. And I quickly stir up the dry ingredients. Then I crack a couple of eggs right into the flour. Some people like to do that right on their counter. I personally like to do it in a bowl, and later we'll see if I transfer everything to the counter. Here's my sourdough starter, and this one is one that was a little bit sluggish. Then I decided to feed it with some whole grain rye flour that I had freshly milled, and that's why the sourdough starter actually looks a little bit gray, almost matching colors with my shirt that I'm wearing on that day. But I also don't mind my sourdough pasta tonight to have a little bit of a bolder, earthy flavor of the rye, because as you will see, I have a pretty bold sauce that I'm going to serve with it. So here I'm with my Danish dough hook and giving all of that a really good mix. And yes, it is a little bit of elbow grease. I'm now mixing it by hand in the bowl into a dough ball. It's coming together pretty nicely, and I don't mind doing these things by hand. And you know, some people have a pasta machine that will do the kneading for them. I find that I can actually do that pretty efficiently. Here's my dough ball that has come together pretty nicely. I'm pretty happy with it. And if you're making this recipe, you can always add a little bit more flour or water depending on how thirsty your flour is and all the other moving parts. And then I'm gonna let that sit on the counter covered with a beeswax wrap. A few hours later, you can always let it ferment for 8 hours. Some people are a little bit queasy about the raw egg. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm letting it sit out on the counter for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on what my schedule is. I want my recipes to work for me, not me having to work around my recipes. Because it is a pretty sticky dough, I like to flour it a lot, and that will also then help for the pasta shapes to come together and hold up nicely. I'll cut my dough ball, which I flattened, in 4 pieces, and I'm gonna again press those pieces in flatter pieces and move them on the widest setting through my pasta machine, and that's always really fun. Usually it is pretty sticky and pretty soft still, and that's where I like to incorporate a little bit more flour, sprinkle it, and then I like to fold the dough in half and move it through that same setting a few more times. I don't really have a ratio of how often I move it through one setting or another. Often I move it through one setting various times, and I just look at the dough, see what it feels like, and I'm adding a little bit more flour here. And sometimes I fold it this way or that way, just how I feel and what the dough looks like. It's pretty meditative practice to crank the pasta maker as you're moving the dough through. I've thought about maybe acquiring an attachment for my KitchenAid, but I don't know if it really makes a big difference because I still have to clean the pasta machine later, which I would have to do with the attachment for the KitchenAid. I'm going to move through all of these dough pieces here and do what I just showed you. A little bit later, I attach my linguine attachment to the pasta maker, and this is where I'm cutting it in long, thin strips. I have moved it through the narrower settings a few times, and unfortunately there's no room for the camera back there, so you'll just have to trust me on where it comes out, but I'm going to show you the strands as they come out in a moment. I have a wooden dish rack that is multitasking here as a pasta rack, and it actually works really well, and you can see that it fits right underneath my upper cabinets. That was not planned, that was just coincidence, but I'm so thrilled about that I can use that. And actually we don't use that wooden dish rack very often. We probably use it more for pasta drying than for dish drying. But I think it's beautiful. It's wooden and it fits right in the kitchen, and it has enough space. I mean, it's not perfect, but I like things that serve more than one purpose. Again, moving the pasta sheets through the pasta maker to get my linguine, or is it fettuccine? I never know. You can leave me a comment if you know the difference between linguine and fettuccine. I'm going to finish my dough here, and then I like to take care of my pasta machine. It is a steel. It is not necessarily stainless steel as far as I know, so it can rust if you get it all wet, which I don't do. At the most I use a soft cloth and slightly moistened, but mostly I just use a brush and brush all the flour. But I do have some pieces of sourdough pasta sticking in the linguine maker, so I'm gonna put it back there by the counter to let that dry a little bit, and then maybe tomorrow or so I can go in and those pieces have dried and will probably just fall right out. And here I'm brushing all the excess flour out of my pasta maker before I tuck it away in my drawer where it lives right underneath me there. And again, a little bit later, I was given a lemon pesto, and I'm thinking I'd like to make a video about different ways to make pesto that doesn't include basil, because there are so many different ways and recipes you can make a pesto and ingredients you can use in a pesto and make that really creative. This one is a lemon pesto that was given to me, and part of the recipe is that you peel a lemon. This is a Meyer lemon that I picked earlier from our garden. It's pretty small. You peel the lemon, and here is my lemon pesto. I have tried it a little bit and I am somewhat happy with it, not 100%. Therefore, I cut my little lemon in half, and because it's a lemon that grows in our garden, it has a lot of seeds, and I'll catch those on a spoon. This lemon is a little bit small for my citrus press, and that's why I'm just using my hands. And I actually love getting those citrus oils on my hands because they make them feel really clean and they smell so nice. So I'm gonna fish out a little lemon seed here and adding the lemon juice because I think it was lacking in something. I think I'm going to play with the recipe a little bit more. I incorporate the lemon juice into the ready-made lemon pesto. And I always like to add some olive oil. First of all, we like the flavor of olive oil. It's really healthy, but it also enhances the flavors. Oh, and my husband just came home saying hello to me in the kitchen, which I always love. Once my pasta water is boiling, this is my pasta water, I'm adding the lemon strips, the lemon peel to it, and I have an old-fashioned kitchen timer that I set to 2 minutes as I'm boiling the lemon peel in the pasta water. That was part of the recipe, and I just followed it because I thought, you know what, if somebody gives me some lemon pesto and it's nice enough, then I will actually follow the entire recipe. After 2 minutes, I'm fishing out the cooked lemon peel, and the idea is that it just gives some of the lemon oils and the aroma to the cooking water for the pasta. I could have maybe used a colander, but it didn't occur to me at the time. I'm using my pasta, whatever you call it, fork. I know what I call it in German, Pasta Heber. Anyhow, yeah, that could have been a little bit more efficient. Now I'm putting my pasta into the boiling water from my wooden dish rack. And the lovely thing about homemade pasta, first of all, it's just so worth the effort. Every single time we eat homemade pasta, we think we got to do this more often. Yes, it is a little bit more work. Yes, it is a little bit more effort. But if you ever get a chance to try it, you will know what I mean, because it is just absolutely so much better than anything you can buy from the store. And it will cook really fast. It only needs a few minutes in boiling water. I'm moving it around to make sure that it cooks evenly, because obviously I don't have a whole lot of water in there. I'm also catching some of the pasta water. I want some of the starches to be in this cooking water, because I will add that to my lemon pesto. It helps the sauce, whatever sauce you're using, to stick better to your pasta. Once that is ready, I will drain it over a colander in my sink and put it back on the stove without the heat, and adding the pasta water over the cooked pasta and my lemon pesto. It's definitely an interesting way to eat pesto. It's mostly almonds and lemon and garlic. I think I want to refine that recipe before I make a video about it, but I feel like it has a lot of potential. Now the fun part is mixing all this together so that all the linguine are evenly coated by the lemon pesto. That tastes really good. I'm adding some freshly chopped parsley over it, just for color and just a little bit of flavor, and then I'm dishing it up. What you will not see here is that we put a good sprinkling of Parmesan over it. For the next recipe, I always need some fresh chopped parsley. You've probably seen that in my previous videos, and I always either get a big bunch from the garden, or if I buy a bunch from the store, and then I use this Mezzaluna, which is called Wiegemesser in German, and chop the parsley. Whatever I have left over goes in a silicone bag that it's a Ziploc bag that I keep in the freezer, and I never waste any of the chopped parsley, because usually, especially when you buy a bunch from the store, you get so much that you can barely use the whole bunch up at the same time, and so I'm saving it for recipes for the future. For this next recipe, this is going to be a sourdough skillet, and I had an idea what I wanted to do. I hadn't tried this recipe, but after I made it and I had the camera running, I have to tell you that it is so delicious. It is absolutely a stunner, and even if you might be a little skeptical, like, I don't know if that's going to taste any good, if it's worth it, I can tell you it is absolutely worth it. I have 2 bulbs of fennel that I am cleaning here and cutting in really thin strips. The idea came from a braised fennel pizza that I have often made, and today I wanted to try something different that was more or less like an upside down pizza. Over some heat, I'm melting butter in my large cast iron skillet, and I'm gonna saute and braise the fennel. Sometimes it can take up to 45 minutes. You want to brown it first a little bit, and that caramelizes. And if you don't like fennel, I always thought I didn't like fennel, but I absolutely love this recipe. Heaping all that in there, stirring it a little around, and I have a wooden lid that fits exactly over my cast iron skillet. And you can see it's already getting browned. I want it really soft. The process is going to take about up to 45 minutes, but I need to watch it a little bit. In the meantime, I have some fontina cheese. You can use any cheese you want. I think a mild cheddar would work, but the fontina has just the right balance of creaminess and saltiness and not a very strong flavor. Here I have my sourdough starter now that is not a whole lot of rye flour in it. I have built it back up with some regular white all-purpose flour, and I'm adding that to a bowl for my sourdough skillet. Cracking 2 eggs. Mix the eggs into the sourdough starter. The nice thing about a sourdough skillet is that you're using so much starter. If you're one that has a sourdough starter on the kitchen counter and has regular discards, it would be perfect for that. I usually have to build up my sourdough starter. To that, I'm adding some melted butter. Again, give everything a good whirl. Adding a little bit of baking powder. I don't need a whole lot. I just want it a little bit fluffy because we're not fermenting this base here. We're just using it as it is and cooking it pretty quickly. And then I'm adding some baking soda. Again, giving that a quick stir. And here is the fennel, braised. It's golden brown. And now all I'm doing is adding the grated fontina cheese right over the braised fennel. And remember, I'd never made this dish before, and it's not a recipe that I have found anywhere. And I added some fontina to my sourdough skillet dough or batter and poured that right over my braised fennel. I'm spreading it a little bit evenly. This sourdough skillet is perfect if you have any ingredients that are not coherent or don't seem to go together. You can always stick them in one skillet and then just top it off with this sourdough batter and some cheese. And here it is, nicely puffed up, golden brown, really yummy. The only thing I might have done differently in the future if I were to do this again, and here's some chopped parsley again, mostly for color and just aesthetics. I would probably just have one layer of cheese in between the braised fennel and the topping, but this was fantastic and absolutely delicious, and this is definitely going to be a repeat here in our kitchen. And if you like some meat with it, or serve with a side salad. My next recipe is going to be a sourdough granola, and I have a manual flaker that I actually got in Germany. I don't know if you can buy this here in the States. For my 1.5 cups of rolled oats, I took about 2 minutes to flake all the oats. To those, I'm adding some melted coconut oil. That helps with the flavor and the browning and the crunch. Then I have my sourdough starter. Again, you can see that it's pretty white. It's pretty much almost all white flour. Adding that to the granola and then some maple syrup. It's a natural sweetener, but I also love the caramel-like flavor, and it just tastes so much better than bland sugar. Some of my homemade vanilla extract, and sometimes I have ground flax seeds that I get at Trader Joe's, some salt, and a good helping of pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. And all of that will be fermented, which means that the phytic acid, the so-called anti-nutrient in the grains that keeps them from spoiling will be reduced by the fermentation, but the fermentation also enhances the nutritional profile and gives it such better flavor, so much deeper, more complex flavor. And I absolutely love using sourdough for a lot of recipes. I have my cookie sheet here lined with a silicone mat, and I'm spreading the sourdough granola in an even layer out on the silicone mat. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be all super even because you want some chunks. That's just the fun of granola. And then I'll bake it at 250 degrees in the oven. You can also use a lower temperature, and then you would have to bake it for a little bit longer. I have some edges that are golden brown, and I'm going to let that completely cool down here on a wire rack before I tuck it away, because if you transfer it to a container and it's still warm, it's going to condense and create moisture in there, and that softens it and also makes it spoil faster. And once it's all cool, I transferred it to a nice jar. Here's my sourdough granola. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.